So, in today's edition of 2026 Watch, we are continuing our series of interviews with candidates for Illinois' 8th Congressional District. Just as a reminder, Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, who's the current incumbent, is running for U.S. Senate for Dick Durbin's seat, which Dick Durbin is vacating. And so that has led to the vacancy in the 8th District. And we've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of different folks running for this seat in the Democratic primary. And I'm again excited to introduce you to another one of the great people running for this seat. She's an active community leader and has a great background in business, and she is running to bring a new perspective to Washington. Joining me today to talk about the headlines, her race for Congress, and a lot more, I'm joined by Sanjyot Dunung. Sanjyot, thank you so much for joining us here on the Isha Anesh Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really wonderful. So much going on. I'm sure that we will have a lot to talk about today, so I look forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's great to have you on. I wish that these interviews could be like 5 hours long, because even that would not be enough. But we are going to try to hit every topic we can get to. But before we do, Sanjyot, why don't you take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. Well, thank you. Well, I am Sanjyot Dunung. I grew up here in Des Plaines, Illinois, in Illinois 8, although Illinois 8 itself has changed a couple times thanks to the gerrymandering in Illinois. I went to Northwestern. I did my MBA at Thunderbird in Arizona, and I am a small business owner. I spent a few years in banking in New York, and then I was a small business owner, an entrepreneur. I have an ed tech company. We're a lifelong learning skilling company. So I come with a lot of private sector expertise. We were delighted to be recognized by Fast Company as one of the most innovative, small and mighty. So it's a badge of honor that that mindset, that innovation mindset is really what I'm bringing, both to this race and to public service in general. I was very honored to also be on President Biden's foreign policy working groups, focused on international trade, helping to boost small business exports. And I've continued that focus by serving on the National Small Business Association, the largest nonpartisan business advocacy in DC, 60,000 members. Small businesses anywhere from a sole proprietor to about 50, 60 million in manufacturing or tech revenue. So we're talking about a really wide range, and we'll talk more. So certainly have private sector policy, which makes me unique. I think that's one of the two of the pieces that are very unique in this race. And then the third component is I'm the only one that's a sandwich generation. I've raised 3 boys. My youngest is in the military, Air Force, juggled a career, and then took care of aging and disabled parents. So I really get what our families are going through. I understand the struggle that they're facing in terms of taking care of childcare, elder care, disabled care. So these are the things that really motivated me to want to get into this race, because I think there's really some common sense solutions, and I know we'll talk about them, but I'm motivated by finding those common sense solutions and delivering them.
It's great to hear. And yes, I do want to talk about the race for the 8th. And usually that is how most of these interviews have gone. But I'm sure, as you have heard, a lot of stuff is going on up in Washington. And right now we are talking about a government shutdown that just started a few hours ago. And it was, there's a lot that we are still trying to figure out in terms of what's Republicans thinking, what's Democrats is thinking right now. But yes, we are effectively in a government shutdown right now. I want to get your thoughts on how we got here and really where we go from this point. And I want to kind of make this a 2-parter. And the second part is, I guess, if you are elected in 2026, you're going to be dealing with Donald Trump, and you're going to be dealing with Republicans in general, whether Democrats are in the majority or not. This is not going to be a problem that goes away, at least for the foreseeable future. So how would you go about working through these issues in Congress? I know it's a lot, so take that.
Absolutely. All good, but all essential. Let's talk about it as essential. So first off, we have a very unusual presidential administration in that there's no strategy. There is just chaos and uncertainty. It's just blow up the place. And I make that distinction because this is not a typical shutdown. This is not a typical debate of principles or ideas. We literally have somebody who is driving the car in the White House, who's willing to crash the car, and us along with them. So we really
Yeah.
need to keep that in mind as we're determining what the right strategy is. I think that it's important to recognize that, yes, people's healthcare is on the line, but there's so much more, right? It's not just healthcare. So if I were there, I would be messaging a little bit broader to talk about Donald Trump's economy. Donald Trump's economy is not working. There's a net job loss. Is uncertainty with tariffs and trade. I spoke to a small business owner the other day. They literally are getting different pricing for shipments that are coming in for their store every day. You can't run a business like that.
No. Yeah.
We know this. So I would be talking a lot more about the devastating impact that this administration is having on jobs, on tariffs, the uncertainty, the chaos. Along with that, healthcare is certainly a very important point. But we've let them once again, and I have a lot of good friends in Congress. Once again, the messaging has been co-opted by the Republican Party to be more that the Dems are trying to save healthcare for everybody who doesn't deserve it. It is inaccurate. It is not at all the case. But again, the messaging has been lost. So we really need to remember, and we should have been planning for this, right? I think the other thing is we knew this train wreck was coming for a while. September 30th has been on the calendar for a very long time. We needed to be able to clearly communicate to people. Your EV subsidies are going away. Your renewable energy. We talk about, for example, wind. I've had the pleasure of driving from Chicago to Seattle a couple of times on road trips, which is a great thing to do, by the way. If you really want to see how much more unites us across the country, take a cross-country trip. You will actually see that people are just normal and want to have conversations and engage. But more importantly, I was struck by how many wind farms, for example, were everywhere in the country. So when Donald Trump tries to take away those subsidies, take away that investment, people are going to be affected in every state. That's what we should be amplifying. That's what we should be talking about. Not some guy in the White House who didn't like the view from his golf course, so he goes against an entire renewable energy, which is proven, which is doing a great job, and which we need to invest in. So coming back to your question a little bit, I think that one, we need to do a better job of messaging. Two, we need to lift up, and we need to say we need to be talking about the middle class. How are they being impacted? Jobs, small business, healthcare, not just one or the other. And then if I were there in 26, I would continue to message very strongly. I will say one more note on this. One thing that I've seen, because I've been to the House a lot, I have a lot of friends in the House. I've sat in the gallery, I've watched bills. I am absolutely stunned by how collegial the place is when the cameras are off. People actually work together. I know nobody wants to hear that. People want to think that everybody's got daggers at each other. But the truth is, it's performative, and we can't let that performativeness trigger us. We need to step back as citizens at every age, every place, and make sure that we're not sort of being fueled and triggered by impulsive reactions rather than the things that will be impactful. Who's going to lose their job in this furlough? Who's not getting their paycheck or their benefit because of this? Let's think through that before we actually crash the car with a president who doesn't care.
Absolutely. And the perspective on messaging is just so important. And I'm glad you're highlighting that because I can scream it from the rooftops because I have been, and a lot of us have been for
Yeah,
years,
exactly.
that Democrats are doing the right things. They stand for the right issues. It's just we suck at getting the word out. So I'm glad that you bring that's a perspective you are bringing, and I think that is so important. And I really do hope that more people are paying attention to that because truly, it is not just obviously the healthcare, which is a huge component of it, but there's so
Exactly.
much more that we could be talking about. Um,
And on
and
that note, right,
yeah,
it's all about what hits your pocketbook. This isn't hard. This is affordability. There are many things that hit your affordability, right? Can you afford your Christmas gifts for your family?
mhm,
Can you afford getting your car fixed? Those are parts that may have to
the
come from another
groceries.
country. Your groceries, um, medicine. So when you start talking about it in very real terms, people get it. And so
Yeah.
that's one thing that I would say as Democrats, we need to do differently. You mentioned a little earlier about this race, which is great. I just want to say before we get into the next topic, this is why this is so important. So thank you for doing this. Democracy is great. We have 10 people in the race. Wonderful to hear everybody's viewpoints. We kind of get to know each other and all very nice people. But we have different ways of solving things, and we have different levels of being effective. And that's what people in Illinois get to choose. 25% of the Illinois delegation is going to change. That's 4 seats.
Yeah. Wow.
Exciting,
Yeah. It
exciting.
is.
So everybody has to get involved. Again, thank you for doing this.
Of course, you're telling me. I mean, I got to talk to all of you running for all of these seats. I'm very excited. But that's a perfect segue actually into our next topic because I want to talk a little bit about the race for the eighth. As you said, you're running in a crowded primary. I like to call it a very vibrant primary. A lot of great folks running with a lot of different backgrounds. First, I just want to know what people in the eighth are talking about. What are you hearing at the doors? What are you hearing from community members? Some of the things that your opponents have said here on the show are things like Medicare, Social Security, protecting the rule of law. Is that generally along the lines of what you're hearing? Is there anything else that we're missing?
I'm hearing all of those, a couple of more, certainly jobs and education. But let me step back for a moment because I think I'm a social scientist, so I always like to start macro to go to micro. Macro, this district from 2020 to 2024 trended further red. Yes, it's still voted blue, but it's trending purple, if you want to call it. And I've spent the last 8 years focused on red to blue. So I see the signs, I hear it in the conversations. More people in our district are independent. And so we need to start thinking about what are people becoming independent? Why? What is it that they're frustrated with? And how can we help solve solutions? So a lot of what I talk about to people are really common sense solutions. It doesn't matter if you're progressive or moderate. Doesn't matter if you're red or blue. We all want the same thing. We want our kids to have a better future. We want our community to be strong, safe, and stable. We want to know that 20 years from now, we will have a strong, stable democracy, right? The same as we
Yeah.
did 20 years ago. So we want the same thing. What we're doing is kind of debating how best to get there. And I think that's what you're highlighting when you're talking about the differences in the candidates. I will tell you, I'm endorsed by Aspire, which is the Asian Congressional Caucus, all 20 Asians in the House and the Senate, including Representative Krishnamurthy and Senator Duckworth. Aspire this year is chaired by Marilyn Strickland, who is the Congresswoman from Tacoma, Washington. Marilyn told me she had a 19-way jungle primary, so I think I'm happy with a 10-way. Everything about democracy is relative, right? You'll see people in our race, we have different solutions for how to get to the economic. I believe in a very strong, robust economy that's fueled by good small businesses, by job growth, by making sure that everybody has an equal and a fair chance to be able to get those. I also believe that we need to start talking about life in terms of short, medium, and long-term solutions. The CHIPS Act under Biden was terrific. It invested long-term in much of the infrastructure we needed and we need, but it didn't give us enough bridges to get there. So people were starting to feel it in their pocketbook, short, medium, and long. Think of it this way. You need to know how you're going to pay your bills for this month, your rent, your insurance. You want to know, can I take a vacation next year? That's another set of planning. And then you want to know, can I buy a house or can I retire or whatever it might be? That's your longer term. We need to think about that as a government and also about the kinds of solutions we're bringing back. So I talk a lot to people, and this is what resonates, is affordability, but also how do we invest in better jobs through apprenticeships, training? Not everybody needs a 2 and a 4-year college degree. How do we give people the tools and the resources to have multiple paths? The second is, I call it living and aging with dignity. And this is really fueled by my mom. I saw firsthand what the indignities are living with a disability. She had a rare form of muscular dystrophy and aging with it. we penalize the middle class. Make just a little too much money, you get no sources, no resources. We need to fix that, and we can. 66% of our Medicaid budget is to push people into nursing homes, for example, once they're destitute. Why do we do that? We don't need to make somebody destitute if they're an 18-year-old with a disability or whether they're older. We can give them the resources, and we can do it through Medicare to give them resources to age in their home, 20, 25 hours if you're disabled, you need help with the shower, you need meal prep, you need all sorts of things. And maybe you want to hire a family member, maybe you want to hire a neighbor. We should make it easy for people to get the care and the service that they need and have the resources, a little bit like a copay for insurance. And then the last thing I hear a lot in my community, and I'm probably unique on saying it so clearly, is pro-legal immigration reform. What does that mean? We need immigrants. Unless you're Native American, we're all immigrants, whether you came 4 years ago, 40 years ago, or 400 years ago. Just a question of how you got here. But we need to make sure everybody's playing by the same rules and everybody feels that the system is fair. We need to invest in caseworkers and judges so that people are waiting months, not years, to get legal status. We need to make sure that we process people quickly. Get your visa, get your green card, get your citizenship. So that's pro-legal. We need immigrants. It is our secret sauce. It's what makes us more innovative. It's our tax base. There's a lot of good people here. So I think that this is something that both parties have dropped the ball on. I hear a lot in our community that there's frustration with both parties on immigration. Why are we even talking about dreamers as dreamers? They should be citizens. They should be no different than everybody else. 12 years later, why are they still a classification? That's wrong. We dropped the ball, and we need to own it when we drop the ball. And I say we, meaning Democrats. And that's the kind of accountability I would hold myself to. And because I know how to get stuff done and I have the relationships, that's a line item. That is somebody's line item in a bill. And I can be effective day one to get some of this stuff done.
That'd be incredibly crucial to get through. And I'm glad you gave Dreamers a shout out because, yes, you're right. I mean, it's so unfair to live in a life of limbo for something you are not at all even at fault for, something you couldn't ever control. You mentioned immigration, and obviously this White House has had insert adjective approach to immigration, and particularly with the ICE presence. And as you know, even in the 8th District, there has been a very big presence, and I've been keeping an eye on communities across the area in northwestern Illinois, and it's pretty intense. I just wanted to real quickly get your thoughts on that presence of ICE and some of the tactics that have been used against protesters, peaceful protesters in many cases.
Well, first off, it's unconstitutional. We have the right to protest. So first off, we have to be protecting our First Amendment rights, the freedom of speech, and the right to protest. The next question is, why is our tax money being used to give $50,000 bonuses to new ICE hires? This is also something that we need to be challenging and questioning. ICE is out of bounds. We know that ICE is not immigration reform. We know the border security is not immigration reform. But this administration is intent on triggering us, triggering people in general. It was a formula that they feel won last year. They demonized immigrants. They demonized people. They made sure that people were afraid with the crime. This is a playbook that they used last year. We now know it. Don't fall for it. My whole point is fight it legally, fight it professionally, but do not get involved in getting triggered by this administration. That's what they're looking for. That's the talking points that they want to take back to their base so that they can then fuel them even more. What we need to do is focus on solutions. And a lot of the solutions are starting to come up. Make sure everybody who is threatened by ICE has legal representation. That's free, fast, and fair. So making sure 2 people were picked up in Elgin. They were citizens. That is absolutely wrong. We should be amplifying that louder, holding this administration accountable. Those 2 people should be suing this administration for wrongful detention. And I hope that they have some good lawyers and they're ready to do that, because the only way we're going to be able to get forward, and I know the Supreme Court is stacked right now, but we have to use the courts to our benefit until we get to 26 and we can defang ICE by taking away their budget.
Yes.
Why are we supporting a paramilitary force? We're spending more money on ICE than we are on any of the programs that this president thought were suspect last year. So
Yeah.
it's a shell game.
It's insane because they say that they can't afford to give people health care and strip millions and millions of people of it, but then it's okay to give the $50,000 bonuses, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
It's not a little ridiculous, it's a lot of ridiculous.
And
Well, let's
we should be as a city, whether it's state of Illinois, whether it's we should be challenging the federal government that we're
yes,
using our taxpayer money to pay for ICE's bonuses. Wrong.
right. Very true. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the big ugly bill very quickly. I know you touched a little bit about on it in a previous answer, but I just want to more specifically just to have a discussion about what's in it and really how it's affecting people. I've been asking guests on the show just specific things that they are noticing in the big ugly bill or specific pieces of policy in there that might hurt more people than designed to help. Just as a reminder for viewers, the Big Ugly Bill takes 17 million Americans off of their health care, takes 3 million veterans and seniors off of their food assistance, takes people out of affordable housing. This was just brought to my attention a few weeks ago. There's a lot in it. I just wanted to see if there was something in particular that you had noticed in it, something that we are not talking about enough in the media.
So two things. Well, first off, I'll tell you, it took away from just about every corner, right? Because the
Yeah.
idea is to not. I'm a big champion of renewable materials for construction. I think that it's one of the ways we can address our housing shortage and make it more affordable. And so
Hmm.
when you stop investing in renewable materials and in terms of making sure that prefab renewable materials, so taking away some of the funding and the opportunities to R&D in there, big problem for me. But let me also flip it on the other side, because a lot of what I talk about when I'm out talking to voters is um, people are really tired of the rhetoric. They're tired of the partisanship. And I go back to the fact that I said we're less blue than we used to be in this district, but they don't like what this administration is doing. But they know that Donald Trump is breaking everything. He's really good at crashing. He just
Yeah.
has no idea how to rebuild. So it's going to be on the next team, if you will, who comes into Congress to help rebuild. And on that note, I sit on the board of the NSBA. We talk a lot about legislative items that will help small businesses because it isn't a level playing field, right? If you're a small business, it's really stacked against you versus the bigger companies. But one of the things that we were able to do is make sure that small businesses can actually take the full expense of research and development in 1 year because they don't have the cash flow. They don't have the bank loans. They don't have the capital. They need to take that versus over 10 years.
Hmm.
Those are small things that put cash back into the pockets of small businesses, making sure that they can invest in their community, hire more people. So we want to make sure that the things that work that are in this bill are kept in the next version and make sure that we fix everything. A lot of what I'm hearing from people in our district is, we have low middle class, middle class, and upper middle class. And we need to make sure everybody feels that they are invested in and championed. And I want to remove and re-engage folks so that we're talking a lot more about the middle class. How do we invest in them from childcare, healthcare, affordability, and housing to also how do you thrive? How do you create better jobs so that everybody isn't worried about surviving? And certainly you're not working two jobs and doing Uber at night. You should be able to have one job to be able to take care of your core expenses. So I think that we need to be taking a look at how to fix this bill, but with an eye towards making sure that we're giving people a chance to thrive, not just survive.
Very, very interesting. And I guess part of, and this is my attempt at a very nice transition into our next topic, but part of the uh, piece of that legislation was AI regulation and AI governance. And I know that this is something that you are particularly interested in as a candidate, and I wanted to to get your thoughts, not just on the AI policy in the Big Ugly Bill, which apparently Marjorie Taylor Greene would have voted against if she knew about the AI policy. Who would have thought? But just AI governance in general, and then where it's headed. I was just talking to a college student just the other day who was at first blaming illegal immigrants for the struggles of his town. And then we talked through it a little bit more and realized that much of their economy depends on their labor. But then he transitioned quickly to it becoming an automation issue and AI taking those jobs. And really, it led me to realize and think about how it's coming and infiltrating a lot of aspects of our life, and in many cases, unchecked, ungoverned. With your background in your career, but also just your interest as a candidate and as I'm sure someone who knows a lot about this stuff, could you speak to AI's presence in our country in our time right now, and what we're supposed to make of it and do with it?
Absolutely. So, we take a look at AI, and first off, I have an ed tech company. We have like a product that's like Netflix for global learning. So I'm steep in technology. I love technology. I don't want anybody walking away thinking that there's a difference. How an AI offers enormous opportunity, whether it's data
Yes.
analysis or whether it's fast forwarding. But what we don't know and what we really need are some boundaries and guardrails, right? We need to make sure that this isn't a technology that runs amok in many different ways. So let me give you a couple of tangible. You talked about your friend. That's been one of the conversations for the last 30 years, right? Immigrants took my job. China took my job. Manufacturing overseas. The trade and the trade disruption from the last 30, 40 years was accompanied by technology advancements. You go to China, there aren't 100 people bent over putting together something. You've got a couple of people managing an entire technology-driven manufacturing plant. So let's not pretend when we talk about manufacturing coming back here that we're going to suddenly have 100 jobs. You're going to have 5 jobs who are managing and overseeing some of that manufacturing. Not a bad thing, by the way. But let's
Yeah.
be honest with people, and let's also have a better conversation. So the first off is we're already seeing the first level of disruption. This year alone, 10% of new college graduates aren't getting jobs, right?
Yes.
You
Very
probably
true.
see it in the people you know. I'm hearing it
Oh
everywhere.
yeah. I hear it every day. I mean, heck, most of the people watching this probably are
Yeah.
feeling it.
And they're being displaced. So that's a big problem. Why is it a problem? Other than the fact that you don't have a job, there's a problem on a number of levels. Again, putting my social scientist hat back on. It's bad for us as a society when our next generation are not getting socialized professionally. Your first job teaches you how to work with people, gives you some basic skill sets, a little bit of training. It helps prepare you for the next job. How are you going to get prepared for the next job if you didn't get the first job? Right. So we need to be thinking different ways. And I have an idea, and I'll come back to you on that in a second.
Sure.
The second is governance. Um, who, who runs all of this? Technology and the tech firms in the 90s tried to pull a fast one on people. And maybe back then it may have made sense. They said, oh, we're very new technology. We need full reign. Don't regulate us. Don't give us any rules. And therefore, there was something called Section 230 put in place. This speaks specifically to content, but the idea was that tech firms had no liability. They said, we're just the pipes. We don't own the oil or the content. We don't make it. Well, fast forward, we all know better, right? We
Yeah.
now know that content companies have been creating content. Their algorithms decide what content to boost and whatnot. We saw that slow moving train wreck with social media and what it did to mental health. We knew as social scientists back 20 years ago that this was coming, but I didn't have my hands on the legislative process as I hope to in 2027 to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Tech companies use all of us as research projects for free, right? So think about it. You are basically training their chat GPT, their AI platforms, all the LLMs. You don't get paid for it. They have no
Mhm.
accountability to you. They have a little disclaimer that says maybe this information is wrong. And then you have the most egregious situation where somebody in Connecticut killed themselves. And what did they say? Whoops, it's not our fault. No, time out. It is your fault. because you cannot release a bottle of shampoo into a grocery store without it being tested. Why can we release tech into the open market without it being tested? So those are
Yeah.
guardrails. That's a governance guardrail. We can legislate that. We can basically say you can't go to market unless you've tested it. Treat it like a drug. You can't, unless you've had controlled testing, you can't put ChatGPT out for 12-year-olds to be able to play with. And no, it's not enough to say that your parent has to actually allow you. It's an
Yeah.
insufficient, right? You know that.
Oh,
Every
yeah.
12-year-old knows how to get around that. So that's a governance issue. There's also a lot of national security issues. I hear NVIDIA and Jensen going around saying every country has to have their own sovereign AI. Time out. What does that really mean? Does that mean that's how you're going to control your citizens? We champion freedom of speech, freedom of thought, unfettered access to information. I am deeply concerned about how these tools will be used against citizens within our country and between countries and within our country. So there needs to be a global platform. By the way, the UN has a forum to do it. The UN isn't perfect, don't get me wrong. I could probably give you a laundry list of things that can be fixed and reformed,
Oh,
but it
yeah.
is the only place in the world where every country sends somebody. Let's start with the fact that we have everybody's ears at the right moment and getting them to say, okay, we need a 2-year system to take a look at AI, regulatory between countries, AI and technology overall, and make sure we have safe platforms that protect people's identity, protect people's IP. You're a content creator. I'm a writer. I've written 17 business books and a young adult novel.
Oh, wow.
Our,
That's a
our
lot.
content, thank you. That content can just be consumed by AI. Who owns it? Who owns it? That's our livelihood, right? You're
Mhm.
seeing it happen in Hollywood. You're seeing it happen to musicians. We need to be thinking of who protects the IP, the intellectual property, who owns it, and also your own identity. If somebody takes your face and says, I'm going to make Ishan show and takes off the S and says it's the Ishan show without the S, who's going to know? Right? Is that fair?
Yeah.
No. Is that legal? Right now, there's no real guideline. We need to make sure there are real legal guidelines. So it's a lot, I know, but we need people to start thinking about AI going forward. Let's go back to the jobs for a quick second. A lot of the young people are getting displaced. And yes, maybe in 5, 10 years, there will be a whole bunch of jobs that none of us have figured out because every time there's technology, right? When fire was created, there were new jobs and the printing press created new jobs. So I'm not trying to slow technology. I'm trying to make sure that each of us has a bridge to make sure we can, live, pay our bills, enjoy life. What
Hmm.
are some of the bridges? So I think that the government can help. The government is here to do big things, right? Why not have a training and apprentice program for a year after high school where everybody gets to do a skill set? You go maybe work in rural America, maybe you work in an environment, maybe you are an assistant to a paramedic or a paralegal, being able or work in a manufacturing as an apprentice, but you get a stipend, right? That same stipend would have been a college loan. Instead of pushing you into a college loan and pushing you into a career that yet doesn't necessarily get a job, let's give people the skill sets and the tools to then decide, do I go to an apprenticeship and I go into trade and vocational training? Do I go to a 2 or a 4 year? But if you do it right after high school, it's a great equalizer. It brings people together. Everybody has a sense of purpose. You're not bipartisanship. You're just simply working side by side in different parts of the country.
I mean, I'd love to hear more about that. That's a very interesting idea. And I mean, I hope that that's talked about a little more and we get to explore it a little more. But Sanjyot, we are actually running out of
Right.
time here for our interview. I would love to have you back on soon sometime, though, because I do want to hear more about this idea, particularly having
Absolutely.
been through that experience myself just not too long ago, or at least that stage. I
Happy
would
to. I
love
would
to
love
hear
to.
more. But before we do wrap up here, why don't you, if you have any parting thoughts, please feel free to share those with my audience.
Sure. Well, listen, I get it. We are living in a moment of incredible chaos, confusion, uncertainty. It is easy, I think, often days to feel overwhelmed, to feel a little disheartened about what's happening. But I always like to say, as a student of history, my dad was a big history buff, and it sort of is probably why I'm a social scientist. Um, Cycles. This is a cycle. The thing about historical cycles are they tend to be every 100 to 120 years. And so you think that no one's ever experienced this before when in fact there are parallels. So I say to everyone, there is a moment. We are going to come out of it. We definitely need to stay engaged, stay focused, make sure you're getting good information. I'm not going to tell you which information is good or bad, but really diversify. Don't just get it all online. Make sure you're reading papers, newspapers, talk to people. Talk to people that you wouldn't normally agree with, because when you humanize one another, that's when we're more likely to find solutions. And I'm confident that we're going to get through this phase. I am confident that together, collectively, with our energy and focus, we will protect our democracy. We will be able to make sure that we have a society that works well for everybody. We just need to stay involved. And if you need to take a day off, if you need to take a month off and check out, go ahead and do so. Because self-preservation is 9/10 of the game, and making sure that you stay sane during all of this. And then the last note is what I said before. Don't allow yourself to get triggered. Don't click on something that you know is likely to be inflammatory. Instead, find somebody to talk to. Find another friend, even if it's a like-minded or non-like-minded person, because talking and staying involved is a great way to find that path forward.
Mhm. Well, Sanjyot Dunung, thank you so much for joining us here on the Ishan Ash Show, and thank you so much for that message to stay involved. It's so important. Like I said, I'd love to have you back on very soon. I know there's so much more that we could talk about.
I would be very happy to. And thank you so much for your time today. Happy to be here. And thank you to everybody who was listening.
Of course.
Thanks.